Welcome back to FumblePuck, everybody. No weekend one-timer this week. We have a special guest. We were lucky enough to be graced by the presence of Eric Engels from Sportsnet, who took over an hour out of his time to chat with us about life and everything that's going on with the Habs. Really lucky to have him talk with us. Really gracious guest on our show, and we're really looking forward to letting everyone listen to our chat with him. So we're not going to waste anyone's time. We're going to dive right into it. Here we go. This is our chat with Eric Engels. Hey guys, we have a special guest today. We're lucky enough to have the master of the Habs beat from Sportsnet here with us, Eric Engels. Eric, how you doing?
I'm doing great, guys. How are you?
Living the dream. We're excited to have you on and just chat a little bit and shoot the breeze about your life in hockey, man.
Sounds good to me, man. It's been a hell of a year so far.
Your job must have gotten weird, huh? Like it must have gotten really weird.
You know, I was thinking about it today. Like it's such a different year. There's so much that we're all going through, and like, you know, at this time where the Canadians are struggling, and you know that they want to win every time they step on the ice, and you hear the way they're talking about the grind of their schedule. You know, you think about everyone right now and the situation that everyone is in, and you know, it's been hell for 14 months, and a lot of us, you know, I've certainly made the best of it on my own side, but you know, it's not like I don't have days where it's tough too, you know. So you try to empathize and really understand what's going on, and at the end of the day, like I had a moment today personally where I was away from it for a little bit, and like I let my mind kind of go away from it for a little bit, and it was refreshing for me. You know, like I'm also in the grind of things with the schedule that I'm on, and there's pressure to deliver, you know, content on a daily basis. And when I'm not doing what I'm doing, I'm thinking about what I'm doing, you know, and I'm planning, and I'm thinking about different angles, and I'm thinking about things and processing them and analyzing them. And it's hard to step away from that. And I feel like everyone right now is dealing with the same thing in their own work, whether it's right now at this very moment or over the last few months or over the last 10 months or over the last 14. So like, I don't know, I guess you guys caught me at an interesting moment, because it, you know, you're bringing me back into it, and I'm happy to get back into it. I feel refreshed going back into it. So I know this is hockey talk, so we talk about some life too, but here we are.
Awesome.
You know?
That's awesome. Energy's a tricky thing, right? Like we had a conference call for work yesterday, and we were actually pretty lucky. Our VP was saying to us, I want to say something out loud so everybody can hear this. When you have a couple of days off, when we get to string together a couple of days off, please make sure you take that time off. Please make sure that you find a way to not have to answer your phone. It's so easy to get called back or have someone from work reach out to you, and it turns your day off into not a day off. So having those moments to really just decompress. And for me, it's, you know, spend some time with the kids, because I'm on a bar schedule. So, you know, they're in bed by the time I get home usually. Little things like that end up meaning a lot more in the last year.
Yeah. And for me, like, you know, under normal circumstances, I have a heck of an off season. It's usually very relaxed. I'm able to get away from it. I'm able to play a ton of golf and be outside. You know, the last off season was brief, and there was pauses, and there was coming up with content with nothing going on. And, you know, there was a pause before the playoffs and then a pause after the playoffs. And still, it never felt like I was really turned away from it or turned off from it. It was just so much going on. And it was a really busy off season for the Canadians too, as you guys know well. So yeah, you know, it's we're all like getting through this, and I feel like we're, you know, getting to the point where you can kind of see on the other side of things here. And like, you think about the hockey players, and they just want to get through this season and get to the playoffs where they don't have to kind of manufacture what's like usually automatically there, and it becomes more fun. And they get through that, and they can look forward to potentially a normal regular season next year. And I think that'll be so refreshing for them, and the possibility of fans coming back with vaccinations happening and all that. And yeah, like it's the thing that could keep us all going here is thinking forward here. So trying to do that a bit too.
Yeah, sure. Right. We always talk about, we talk about players because they're millionaires and they make tons of money and stuff. The human side matters to them. I wonder, they're lucky to get to play hockey for a living, and they are, but this season must not have been fun for a lot of them. A lot of them probably just, and I'm not saying it affected their effort, because I think our team especially plays their heart out, but the losing the fun a little bit this year is something that worries me about them. I empathize.
Yeah, you should. Like there are people. If you take it outside of hockey and you think about the richest people within our community, sure, they've had the luxury of that, but at the same time, they're dealing with the same things that we are, just on different scales and different levels, and have different things to relieve themselves for it if the money buys it for them. But like, take it back to the hockey and the players. Like, all that is true, but they're living, if we're living super restricted lives, they're living much more restricted lives than we are. What they've had to adhere to in terms of protocol is the best thing that the NHL could have done. It's the only way this thing could have moved forward. And there's still so many hiccups because this virus is unavoidable to a degree. But, these guys are at the rink playing hockey at home and in the hotel. They are not out anywhere other than to take a walk here or there or whatever it is. And like, it's the same as what we're dealing with, but like in an even more restricted way. And it's great they have the money to fall back on, but like, it doesn't change the fact that they're people and they're dealing with things from a mental standpoint the same way everyone else is. And it's hard, because they have limited windows for their careers, and the amount of time to really truly enjoy them is limited. And it's hard. Just like I might think, I'm losing a couple of years of my prime life. Not losing them because I'm still living them and to the best of my ability, but like losing them the way I could have, just like everyone else. And so were they. They're just because they're hockey players and they make a ton of money. So are they. Like it's hard. It's been hard the whole way, and I've spoken to a lot of players, and we've heard them say it publicly, and they've said it to me privately. Like, they have never experienced a grind like this in their lives, and not just because the schedule's tough. It's like what it takes to do it and what's expected of them. It's very difficult.
Do you know if the Habs are planning to vaccinate the team, like ASAP?
I know that they would love to get everyone vaccinated as quickly as possible, and that they'll do it according to the code and to when their availability is there. They're not jumping the line. They understand the optics of that and don't want to have anything to do with it. And at the end of the day, like, I'm sure if some guys have some conditions that require them to be vaccinated sooner, they, potentially some of them have. It's been kind of a thing that we haven't discussed, but as we get further along, it is a question that I think is going to come up in some media availabilities for sure. But, I think everyone is just wanting to go about their business here. And again, to my knowledge, I don't believe the Canadians have been vaccinated, the vast majority of them. And I think, we're getting to a point, though, where we're coming close to the age groups that cover these players in our vaccination schedule in Quebec. And I think hopefully, by the time we get to the playoffs, there could be a possibility that they get vaccinated, which would be great. To
me and Noah actually had a conversation, or Noah and I had a conversation about this a few episodes ago, where Noah felt it was jumping the line, right, Noah?
Yeah, I was not a fan of them jumping the line, so I think I agree the optics would not be good, and waiting their turn sends a good message.
There would be no way to spin it well. Like, there would be no way to spin it well if they did that, and I don't believe they have. And also, like, but the other side of it, and I'm a big believer in this, and I feel like maybe I'm taking the words out of your mouth, Ashley, like, the more people that get vaccinated, the better. Like, yeah, that's our way out of this. Let's come to that reality.
But I also feel that it's not jumping the line because, yes, they're millionaires, but it wouldn't be them buying the vaccine anyways. It'd be the NHL, let's say. I'm just throwing an example out there. And the NHL wouldn't be taking our stock. It would just be taking, like, for example, let's say the 60 million doses of AstraZeneca that the US has manufactured that they won't even give their own people, but that's a whole other story, to to the team. So it would cost them maybe a few, like maybe let's say $50,000 to vaccinate the entire organization, not just like all the organized, or maybe probably more than $50,000. But AstraZeneca is a very cheap vaccine, so we're just using that as an example. Like, for let's just say $100,000, you have everybody in the NHL vaccinated, which I think would stop the curve and stop having all these issues, right? So depends on how you look at it, I guess.
Listen, like I said, I do believe that the more people that get vaccinated, the better, and the sooner, the better. But yeah, the others, like, I don't think anybody should do it in a way that is not by the system. So I'm not, at the end of the day, hopefully this all goes through quickly. That's really all we could say about it. I mean, it's I don't see them doing it in a way that's nefarious or whatever it is. Like I think they'll do it by the book. They've already waited this long to do so, and it is something that is, like I said, it's something that is going to come up. People are going to start wondering as we're getting into that range where vaccines are becoming way more readily available. So I hope it happens soon for everyone, really, of all age groups, as quickly as possible.
Me too. I just to throw it out there, I'm not pro like bending the rules and stuff. I got you. Because I personally have health issues, so I was fortunate to get vaccinated 2 weeks ago. Yeah. But like I've been asking to get, I was on wait list for like a month and a half with nothing until I was finally legally allowed to get it. So that's where I stand. But it's all good. I just believe in vaccination, so get vaccinated, people. So I have a question. Let's go back to the draft. If that's cool. I have a question about the drafting of the NHL for you. It's a bit of a weird question. You ready?
I'm ready for any question.
Noah, do you want to do it or you want me to do it?
Go for it.
Okay. I hope this comes out properly. So the number 1 overall pick, it usually gets, there's a lottery, right, for like the top however many teams, and that's how it works. And then the Edmonton Oilers end up getting it 16 times in a row, right? Here's my theory. Every team should have a chance. No matter if you won the cup or not, I don't care. All 31 teams should have a chance. And when you win it, you are out for the next 10 years. So those other 30 teams still have a chance. Then it goes down to 29 teams, 28 teams, all the way down to soon to be 22 teams, and you have a chance. And then as those 10 years pass, you get back into the conversation. But it gives more of a chance for everybody to get the first overall. Good or bad idea?
It's an interesting idea. I mean, it is an idea that I don't know if I could flesh out on the spot in terms of assessing whether or not it's good or bad, but it is interesting. It's a way to rework things. I think what you're really aiming for is equality in the system. To a certain degree, the salary cap has leveled the playing field already. I do believe that the GMs, recently met on the lottery and there were changes that were made. The people that do institute those rules and how they think about them, they do have a pretty elaborate process to getting it to where they want it to be, and they have to get a pretty large consensus to make the changes that they do. So I guess we'll see how it shakes out over the next little while, but I do believe that there should be an advantage for the teams that don't do well. That's the price you pay. Mark Bergevin always said, that's the price you pay to get that opportunity to draft at a higher level. I don't think we see a lot of intentional losing in hockey. We've had seasons for sure in the last few years where there's been one or two teams that really, as they were cratering from the start, decided to dig themselves further. But, those teams haven't been rewarded to a degree.
Well, one has.
Yeah. Yes, one has. But, it's rare that happens. It happened with Pittsburgh. It happened with Edmonton.
Toronto.
Yeah, and Toronto for sure. But, they were bad for a really long time. That is and inevitably, look at how all the teams have been built in terms of the top ones, with the exception of Vegas. It's through the draft. So, there was a lot of pain in those seasons for those teams to end up in those positions. And now they've changed the rules to potentially make it harder for the bottom team to get in there, marginally, obviously. But yeah, I don't know if I would rejig the entire system and turn it on its ear. I do understand the premise of what you're talking about, though. It's interesting.
I think that's cool because this went in a really great direction, because we were talking about this the past couple of days, the concept in hockey and in sports in general of the journey versus the destination, and the quality of the product on the ice and how entertaining a game is. That people say you can play boring hockey because the Stanley Cup parade is going to be fun. Where do you lie on that kind of spectrum? Would you rather a high octane game, or would you rather the Stanley Cup parade at the end of the season?
I know what I'd rather watch, but winning is winning. Any team that finds the recipe to winning, whether it's boring or entertaining or somewhere in the middle, or an inconsistency between those three things, winning is winning. Winning is exciting, and when it happens on a frequent basis, it's exciting. I think people will look back at the New Jersey Devils in the years that they were winning and say to themselves, it wasn't that great to watch throughout the regular season and even at some point in the playoffs, but they played a masterful game and won. a lot. So, look, what would I rather? Would I rather watch Calgary and Montreal play each other versus, what I saw in Edmonton a couple of nights earlier? Absolutely not. But if it leads to consistent winning, I don't. That's their job. The most important thing that they can do is win. And I know it's a sports business, and I know it's about entertainment, but winning is the most entertaining thing possible if you do a lot of it. That's for sure.
That kind of leads me. What about from a journalist perspective or a growth of the game perspective too? Right. I mean, if hockey comes off as if it's not flashy, not exciting, it must be harder to cover, and the game probably wouldn't grow as much. I don't know. Like the game doesn't necessarily grow by Stanley Cups being won. It grows by great on ice product, right? Does it make your job harder when the Calgary Montreal happens, or does it make it easier because at least you have an extra layer to write about?
I think those things are mutually exclusive. Like I really do, the entertainment value is there for what you see, but at the end of the day, as a journalist, it's not, you're never writing so much about the game as much as you are what the game means in the big picture. And so the story, we're looking for a richness in the story. The game being played in a way that's not entertaining like it was in those Calgary games is a footnote in the story, really. It's more about the performance and what happened, and where it takes the team on its 56 game journey, so we have a saying, we like to say we cheer for the best story. If we're entertained in the process, it can be more exciting to write about. That's for sure. But
that feels like a very Jeff Marek line.
It does it. I don't know. I like Jeff a lot, so I'll take it.
Awesome.
Do you guys agree we should just banish the trap, however?
It's interesting. That's a very interesting question because basketball has a legal defense. There's things that you're not allowed to do from a defensive standpoint in basketball. There's things you're not allowed to do from an offensive standpoint in basketball also. I don't know, I think I'm up for anyone. I think I'm up for any idea where it can be elaborately fleshed out and proven to be one that's worth entertaining. The idea of getting rid of the trap to me is stifling creativity to a degree also. It's funny, we look at the trap as something that's extremely boring, but it is a creatively processed, element of the game that if it's executed properly is, very hard to play against. You watch the Calgary Montreal games, Calgary wasn't playing a trap, it was boring as sin, and they weren't playing a trap. They were just playing a game that has no finesse in it. It's a game that's, pound it past your defense, make it a hard night for them all night, turning, looking, and that if the support isn't there, you're going to have a hard time moving it. And they jam up the walls and they put pressure on you. And, there's the only difference, I think, between Calgary and what Carolina does is there's a bit more finishing skill featured throughout the lines in Carolina, but they play that system too, where they play a really hard pressure game on you and are willing to chip pucks in and dump them, and they really force their defensemen into the play. And it's not a trap, but it could be just as stifling. So I don't think you should be allowed, long-winded answer, but I don't think you should crack down on a style of play so much as, enforce some of the rules a little bit more and create flow that way, If
you could make a rule change, what would you do?
Trapezoid. Get rid of the trapezoid. Trapezoid is total bullshit. They instituted the trapezoid because they felt that there were some goaltenders that were too good at moving the puck. It handicaps an incredible skill. Also, I believe that it would create much more offense in the game from two perspectives. One, if your goaltender is great at moving the puck and is able to venture outside the trapezoid and get the rush started quicker, I think that's more exciting. I also think that the more a goaltender does it, the more they're going to give the puck away. And that also leads to offense. So to me, the trapezoid is the worst thing that's come into hockey from a role perspective. I know people will probably point to puck over glass, but yep. I think we would see a lot more flow in the game if we remove the trapezoid.
How about calling penalties if the head is impacted in any way, shape, or form?
That's a really hard one. I've had some real discussions with the league about this, and this is a bus that the players need to drive at the end of the day. It is the players that have to look after each other. If they believe that there needs to be a universal head contact rule that sees a hit penalized that involves head contact, only the players can really truly make that happen. And I know there's GMs and the competition committee, but the players have to drive the bus on that. And the players, for the most part, don't want to remove certain hits from the game. I know people watched the hit from Tyler Myers on Yoel Armia. The hit itself, from a technical standpoint, is a clean hit where head ends up getting contacted within the hit. The thing that I didn't like about that hit, and which the NHL doesn't have a right to suspend on, is the situation of the game when that happened. The Canadiens had a significant lead. There was a couple of minutes left in the game. He was frustrated. He was -3 or -4 in the game. He had a chance to line someone up who was vulnerable, and he hit them. And from the rule, though, the NHL suspends and makes their decisions on the rules themselves. They don't go into court and argue that someone should be thrown in jail for the circumstances of something if they didn't break a law. You know what I'm saying? So it's complicated from their end, and everyone gets frustrated with them. The rule book would need to be changed for them to enforce it in a different way. It would be nice if they could take this context that we just discussed into consideration in their decisions, because that context only comes into play once they've decided that someone has broken a rule and they're going to suspend them. Then, the length of the suspension depends on all those things we just talked about. So if you want to see change on that level, and I know the players don't to a degree, they do like to be able to hit a guy like they've lined them up, and if they hit them in the chest and in the follow through the head gets contacted, or just because of the way the players were positioned, the head ends up getting contact, they need to want to get rid of that. And I don't sense that the majority of them do. So I don't know when we'll see change, but to me, just so we're clear, it absolutely depends on the rule book itself getting changed. And I don't know that universal rule of anything that if there's ever head contact in the play, that should automatically warrant a penalty. I think it's hard, because there are certain hits in the game that do belong in the game.
It must be hard to legislate a sport that takes place on ice where you're going to slide into people and hit people naturally, right? A lot of people talk about, not a lot of people, but there are people who say hitting should be out of the game. There's no way that's ever going to happen, right? Finding that line, I think hockey struggles finding its line. So I agree with you on that. It's not an easy place to figure out where to make a stand,
This is also, I think, one of those topics that is so on a higher level, on a higher emotional scale within social media. But
yes,
we see something very different when the fans are in the rink. On social media, fighting and abolishing fighting is a much more fervent topic. But in the rink,
people cheer for it.
And I've been in them for my entire life, and for 14 years covering the game. I never see anyone sitting down during a fight. Now,
You've never seen me then.
I don't condone it. Okay, I shouldn't say anyone, but the majority of people will stand up when a fight breaks out.
You cheer for it, absolutely.
Just like when they're in a bar, they will stand up, and if a brouhaha happens, they're, what's going on? Same thing with hits too. When you see a monster hit in a game, it brings the entire crowd out of its seats and creates a certain energy. That's why we love playoff hockey. Let's be honest.
PK on Brad Marchand. Remember that?
Yeah. But we do know better. I grew up, and I'm roughly the same age as you guys. I'm right in between. I'm 38. And sorry to out you guys for your ages. But no, but one of my favorite players to watch was Raffi Torres. And
Oh,
then
really?
and then the because he was a truck of a hitter. Like, he was an unbelievable hitter. And then the rules changed, and that, we just started knowing better, and the rules changed, and we decided to take those hits out of the game. And he unfortunately became known as one of the dirtiest players in the league. But like, he was making a living that's how he made it into the NHL. And that was permitted, and that was totally fair game. And like, so we might be at, I don't know if we're there yet, but we're approaching that crossroads where we have to start deciding, does the game need more legislation to take out some of the stuff that I might like, but know better that, some of the things that these guys are suffering with because of them, maybe the game doesn't need them. But at the time, I thought about Raffi Torres and thought, this is a guy that, he got dealt kind of a bad hand to a degree, like that he has to take responsibility for not adapting and changing. But imagine you did your whole life, you built yourself into that model, and that was what your entire kind of living depended on, the way he played the game. And then he can't do it that way, and his value is no longer the same. Hockey is a physical sport, and intimidation is a factor in it. And there are players that, because of the way they play and how they are able to hit, that they're intimidating. The Canadians have a few of them. And Romanov is on his way to being one. It's intimidating to play against that, and when you know that if you didn't pay attention properly, you're going to get smoked. And maybe we're at a point where we're approaching a point where we might change that, but I don't know. It's still the stuff that gets people out of their seats, regardless of what the discourse is on social media about it.
Well, it's crazy because it shows the value of how the value perception has changed in the NHL too. Because Torres was like a top 5 pick, wasn't he? Like 5th overall or something.
I don't know. You're testing my memory big time on that.
I'm pretty sure he was a top 10. I'm pretty sure. I feel like
it's a quick Google.
But he
overall 2000 New York Islanders.
There you go.
Yeah. He gets picked that high. We don't see that anymore. Like Tom Wilson, maybe Wilson was like in the teens, right? Like 13 or something like that.
I thought Tom Wilson was a second rounder, but
no, he was a first rounder for sure. Because
13th overall.
He was 16th, and the only reason I remember this is because my uncle worked with his mother, and my uncle, who doesn't know anything about hockey, he was at my house, and he came into my room and said, "Did Tom Wilson go?" And I said, "Yeah, the Capitals." And it was the first night of the draft, and it's the only reason I remember this. And I said, "Oh, he's like, that's my friend's son," and I was like, "That's so cool." And
that is cool.
He's also really dirty, but he's really cute, but he's dirty.
He's
got a skill level too that allows him to compete, right? Like he can ride with Ovechkin and
he's
play.
Also very good. He's very good. And Raffi Torres was very good also. He had really great hands. He had scoring touch. He had a very heavy shot, but he was a killer on the ice. I mean, he was, and look, before him, Scott Stevens was a killer on the ice. No one thought, oh, Scott Stevens is dirty. He was a hard, dangerous, hard hitter. Like, was he dirty? I mean, he didn't. Not all of his hits were clean, that's for sure. But he wasn't viewed as dirty. He was respected for who he was. And Raffi Torres was that too, to a degree, before things changed and he became a perennial rule offender.
It's crazy what happened. I have a question. How did you get into hockey? Like, did you play? Did you just love covering the game? Like, what's your backstory on this?
I played, not at a particularly high level, some double B, maybe a call up for a double A game. I played high school hockey. I played, all throughout my life, loved the game. As a kid, I just knew a lot about the game. I really knew the game inside out. My best asset as a player was my brain. I had the skills. I could shoot, I could pass, I could, I do all those things and play at a competitive level. And really, when I got to my 20s, I had fallen so in love with the game that I was playing 5-6 times a week. And that's when really I played my best and really enjoyed the game and learned so much about it. And as you mentally mature, kind of, it becomes that much more fun because you just see it from different angles. And that was kind of, that was the foundation of me getting into media and what I do, is that I came to love the game so much that I knew it inside out. That if you put me in a room with a lot of people, chances were I knew more about it than the majority. And, that was the passion behind, getting into this. And in terms of my career, it really was, I wasn't sure what I was going to do with my life. I just knew that of all the things I knew about in life, I knew hockey better than most of them. So I don't know. It's a long story in terms of how I made my way to here, but that's the foundation of it, is just knowing the game and being able to discuss it with people and get to a level where I can analyze it and people will read it, and hopefully hopefully more than half of them don't hate it. That's where we're at.
I don't think so. Like, there are a lot of sports personalities where you can like shake a fist at them. I feel like you're not one of those people. Like, you're hard to shake a fist at, you think.
I agree. Well, I appreciate your takes.
I hope there's some people shaking their fists at me. I mean, it's it would be more fun that way.
Interesting. We can create some drama on Twitter for you if you want.
No, we're good with that.
You got to go on the road and stuff like that for work, obviously. What's like one of the craziest things you ever got to do at work wise? Like, what city? What like something cool?
Something cool. Oh, you're gonna find my life incredibly boring. No, but
like, you ever been to Vegas? Have you been to Vegas yet for a game?
Oh yeah, I've been everywhere in the NHL.
You must have a cool story.
Yeah, I got a number of. I can't think of like one off the top of my head. I've had some great nights in New York. Like I could more tell you really where I love to travel to.
I'd love to hear
what I love about it. You go to a place like New York often enough and you come to know it pretty well. And I just feel alive when I'm there. They say it's the city that never sleeps, but it's like you don't want to while you're there. There's so much action going on and it's so exciting and vibrant. And just the sounds and sights of it are sensory overload to a degree. And, when you get to stop in there for 3-4 nights as you're going to maybe games in Manhattan and Long Island or New Jersey or whatever it is, I have so many friends that are there, and it's just, there's been a lot of great times. I think about times in Montreal too, or like after playoff games and just going to have a few drinks with a few colleagues that I have a lot of respect for and guys that we have a great time, I miss those days. We haven't had them in over a year. And that's a big part of the job that makes it so enjoyable, and being able to discuss the game with people that know it on a level that's very different and are so inside of it too. So and we talk about our work and we have a bunch of drinks and have a great time and go back and do it again. And it's a fun living and it's a fun thing to do. And Los Angeles is incredible. Las Vegas, I have a blast. I do like to play poker. So, when I'm not covering the game, I might sit down at a table for a few hours or 8 or 9. And Nashville's an incredible place to stop. And, I'm a big foodie, so hitting up different places. There's a bunch of great stops in the NHL circuit. And I've had a lot of great nights. I've had a lot of really fun nights and a lot of really like covering the big games, is great. I think like covering the World Cup final in 2016 was a blast. Had a great time going out with the Hockey Night in Canada crew. I was kind of young in my days at Sportsnet and just hanging out with all those guys. And I remember Ryan Whitney and Colby Armstrong were both in town for that. And I just had a blast with those guys. So there's always a lot of great people around the hockey world, and to be around with them. And that's a big fun part of the job for sure.
That's awesome.
You just mentioned like half of my favorite places when you were taking us around the league, by the way. I'm a massive LA, New York person. So
I'm fired up just hearing about this. Like I'm excited for you to get back out there too. Like that's awesome.
I miss LA also. Oh, so much. And
LA is great. Every time I go to California, all I think is like, well, why do I live where I live? What am I doing with my life? Like,
same here. And then I think
also,
healthcare.
I'm a golf freak. I'm a foodie, and I don't know. The idea of living there would be tremendous. I just need to make a couple more $1 million to do it. But I love being there. California is an awesome trip, and Vegas and New York and Boston is great. Chicago is amazing. Philadelphia is amazing. go to Brooklyn. I have a bunch of friends there.
Are you pro Columbus Cannon or anti Columbus Cannon?
I'm anti Columbus Cannon, but Columbus, the city, is a great town to go out and have some drinks and party it up and have fun. Like, it is a fun little town, underrated. Detroit is shockingly improved dramatically. Like, it's really come about. They've cleaned up the city. They've done a pretty good job, and there's some great restaurants there, and it's a nice town to visit in the winter. It's quite something. It's a little different. Like, traveling in there is not the best in terms of flying in there, but Washington DC is amazing. Like, what a city that is. That's a tremendous stop. I'm looking forward to Seattle. That'll be cool. Obviously, Western Canada, going to Vancouver is amazing. I don't know. There's a lot of really good stops. Nashville is unbelievable. Nashville, that's going to be a party. We're going to have a good time. Like, that's just that kind of town. And I wish New Orleans had a team.
I have to say the prettiest arena I've seen is Anaheim. Do you agree?
Oh my gosh. It needs to be totally redone.
It's so pretty though. It's orange marble.
Yeah, no, it needs to be redone. But I'll tell you, Detroit and Edmonton what they've done there is incredible. Washington's got a very nice rink. MSG is pretty special. MSG is a really special vibe, being in there and behind the scenes and all that. And that's a pretty cool thing being there. Vegas is unbelievable.
It looks amazing on TV. I mean,
I don't think I could handle Vegas. I'm one of those people. I wouldn't survive, I don't think.
Vegas is fine. Yeah, it's a lot of degenerate behavior in Vegas. It's really something. It turns people into monsters.
I'd be like the guy in The Hangover on the roof the next day, baking in the sun because they drank too much Jaeger.
You probably would be, but you'd be fine after a few days. What kind of poker do you play? Do you ever play Pygo?
I don't. No, I'm a Texas Hold'em kind of guy.
Oh my God, I love Pygo.
Yeah, I don't. And I don't, I really do enjoy playing poker. It's something I really, really love. But I don't get to do it very often, that's for sure.
Have you ever played poker against an NHLer?
No, I haven't.
Damn.
Who do you think would have the best poker face on the team?
Lehkonen.
Really? I think Weber.
I think Lehkonen would have Lehkonen could pull the serious face pretty good.
Lehkonen is Noah's favorite player, by the way.
I love Lehkonen.
So does my mom.
Listen, Arturi gets a lot of flack for the fact that he doesn't score. And, I know that I think when you watch him play, you can see a certain tension in his game. It looks hard for him to get loose in those scoring areas. He's got it's really a strange phenomenon, and I think it is largely a mental thing, because coming up, he was a decent goal scorer, and he's got a great shot. I mean, he has a really, really good shot. I watch this guy practice on a daily basis. His shot is excellent. It's just he tightens up in those areas. But outside of that, I think he's a guy that's kind of, you either understand really what he does and appreciate it, or you can't get past the fact that he doesn't produce enough offense for what the positions he's putting himself in. So he does everything right. Like, he is an amazing pressure forechecker, first stick on puck, for like a perfect F1 kind of player, great on the back check, never shies away from taking a hit to make a play. He is the classic mold of, like, the Finns just know how to play the game, and he just does. He really has that. And there's a lot of teams that would love to have that player. They see the value in that player. You'd just like to see that, like, some of what he does translates to more offense, because he really does play the game the right way.
Different league, but he tore up the SHL playoffs when he was a kid, right? Like, we know he has it in him. We've seen it.
Not an easy league either. It's not an easy league to score in, especially as a young player. And like I said, he has those abilities. He has those abilities. His shot is great. He has good instincts around the net. He gets himself to those areas, but he tightens up when he gets there. And you'll see him heal a lot of shots. You'll see him shoot them wildly. You'll see it too in his passing game coming over the line. But you gotta appreciate what the players do, what they bring, in their own individual skill set. And you look at players and say, okay, if they're not going to score, what else are they going to do? He's one of those guys that he does all the things if he's not going to score. So I think he's a valuable player, but it hasn't been a consistently great season for him, much like it hasn't been for a lot of players.
Yeah.
And maybe Toffoli and Anderson, but that's about it, I would say, who have had great, not even great, but good. Toffoli's on a whole other level, but I agree with you on Lehkonen, though. I have said that forever. He's an amazing forechecker, and he's amazing with what he brings in the terms of his defensive game. But
you can vote for the awards, right?
Yes.
Question: despite his lack of offense, would Danault be on your Selke ballot? Are you allowed to tell us that, or are you keeping it secret for now?
I don't think he would be this year, but he got a 4th place vote for me last year. I don't know how people viewed Danault's season. I know that he went 25 games without a goal. I know that after about 15 games where he had a really rough start, he started to pick up his game and has played very well since. I think there's more offense to be had from everyone in the lineup, but Gallagher's a big hole. But yeah, I mean, I watched Danault play, and he's playing really hard every night. I think he hasn't gotten enough credit for how well he's played since that rough start.
Noah and I are always arguing if Danault is a legit number 1C, and I'm just curious your opinion on it. But you don't have to tell me if you don't want to. I think Danault is an elite number 3C and a very capable number 2C. Thank you. He's on my side. See that, Noah? See?
He's not
this year. Yeah, definitely. Last year,
he's not a number 1 center.
No, period. He's never been a number 1 center. I'm sorry.
But he's an elite shutdown center. Number 3 is not even the right way of looking at it. Like, he's an elite shutdown center.
Yes,
who can absolutely produce at the other end of the ice, not at the level of a top 6 centerman, but as a middle 6 centerman, absolutely hits that production between 40 and 50 points, virtually locked in. And that's while playing against the best players every single night and doing a pretty good job of shutting them down. So, and being a primary penalty killing role and taking all the key face-offs. I mean, he's a very important player. And, while we're talking about Danault, like, the discourse around Danault over the last year has been somewhat disgraceful. You're talking about a player that everyone jumped all over him for not wanting to give up his role. He's asked about his role and says, I'm not ready to just be a purely defensive centerman. And everyone takes it as, you're not ready to play in the 3 spot or this or that. And why should he be? Because Suzuki and Kotkaniemi had a good playoff. Good. Let them earn it. I don't see them playing against the top players every single night and taking away the responsibilities that Danault has to have because he's the most capable. Now, I understand that for 15 games, he wasn't doing it. And a large portion of that was because a lot of people turned on him for just, like, would you want a player to say they want to give that stuff up?
Exactly. It made no sense, right?
I wrote that day when we had that press conference and he was talking about his role way before the season started that, the Canadians understand who Phil Danault is, and they're not going to hold it against him that he made these comments. If anything, they'd be upset if he said anything else. The second thing is his contract situation, and what he had earned going into this season was a better deal by the numbers as a comparable than Jean-Gabriel Pageau. And Jean-Gabriel Pageau got a 6-year deal worth $5 million a year. Mm-hmm. And I understand that this situation, leaked out to La Presse that Danault had turned down a 6-year deal worth $5 million. And you think to yourself, in a pandemic adjusted and certainly on value with the comparable, he'd have to be crazy not to sign it. There's some stuff missing from there. And I'll tell you one thing, if you're really smart and you could think about it objectively, if you think for a second that Philip Danault and his agent got a 6-year deal worth $5 million a season, and the first thing they did was hang up the phone and say no deal. Staal, I mean, you're crazy. Like, he's not an idiot, and neither is his agent, Don Meehan, who's one of the best agents in sports. I think inevitably I'll get to the bottom of it and put something out. I hope there will come a time where I'll be able to tell all the details of what happened there. But I think if you're objective and you're smart enough, you're not sitting there thinking that he just turned this flat down and then, said, nah, forget this. I don't need this. Now we'll see where his value is and what he ends up signing for and where he ends up signing. I think the Canadians would be in a big hole if they lost him.
Yeah, we just don't have a replacement for him, right? Like, that's a big issue.
Could it be Ryan Paling?
No, listen, I think Ryan Paling and Jake Evans are on their way, but they're still young players who you have to look at them and say, between them and Suzuki and Kotkaniemi, are they going to be able to shut down the best players in the world and take on the offensive burden? There's a lot that goes into it.
Yeah, I don't feel like they're ready yet, right? Like, that's why I see value for Danault coming back, understanding where he's going over the next 5 years, kind of, At the end of the day, he's got to want to be here too. I don't know what this season and how things went has shifted his perspective or not. We haven't had a chance to speak to him about it. But, you hear the comments that he made yesterday. Yep. I wouldn't tilt them towards saying, he's done with this market and he doesn't want to be here. He just acknowledged how difficult it is at times. That doesn't mean that he wouldn't want to stay. And I know he loves being a Montreal Canadian, but he's got a choice. It's very rare that players like him end up in a situation where they might have a choice. And Marc Bergevin had a choice to get him signed prior to the season. He made an offer. There's no denying that, and probably the offer that was on the table. But I don't know that there was a negotiation. So at the end of the day, there was a risk in that too. And that's opening up the door to Danault getting closer to free agency and contemplating it and potentially leaving. And I think the Canadians would be in a very tough spot if that happened. As Mark has said on many occasions, it's very hard to trade for centermen and good ones. And whether you see Danault as a 1 or 2 or a 3, it's very hard to trade for either an offensively prolific centerman or one who's capable of doing what Danault does.
How about if we were to go after Eichel?
How about if everyone were to go after Eichel?
It's my pipe dream, though. Let me have it.
How about if everyone were able to go after Eichel? I mean, if I'm the Buffalo Sabres, I'm not trading Jack Eichel. You would have to, they say, oh, you'd have to blow my socks off. Like, it would have to be something that you would not want to pay to get him. And that's me exercising my control over the situation with Jack Eichel signed to a long-term deal and having no say as to whether or not he leaves. I would force him to sit out games before I traded him. That's how much I think of Jack Eichel's ability and what it would be like to trade him and be able to win that trade. It would be virtually impossible unless you had a team that was willing to give up so much that it wouldn't be worth it for them to do it.
That's kind of like the trade-off, right? Like we talked about the pain you have to go through in order to get that first overall pick. Maybe the pain is trading more than you wanted to in order to get it in town.
It's really, you really got to think of it on those terms. It's not just what you're getting. It's always about what you're giving up too. And if you're the team that's trading that player away, you need to come out at least even on it. And that's a really hard thing to do because players like that we throw around the term generational talent. Like, I don't know how much you guys have watched Buffalo over the last couple of years, but he's a player that absolutely just takes over games.
Yeah,
he's that good.
He's what we need so bad.
I don't know if he's a leader. I don't know if he's the right captain for the Buffalo Sabres. Maybe he is. I know that there's not a lot of evidence to suggest he is, given the way things went there this year, but I don't think that's all on him. And now he's hurt and unfortunately missing the rest of it. But man, like I would never trade that guy. I would not trade that player because I don't see how I could replace them. And look at Columbus, they had gotten into a sticky situation with Pierre-Luc Dubois. He wasn't signed long-term. He wasn't going to sign long-term. They were going to lose him down the line and had to try and get the best value possible and ended up getting a superstar for him who might walk out the door also. And the worst part about it is you trade a top center and you're not getting one back. So where does that put your organization down the line? Even if Line is there, we all know in Montreal, you need centers to make it work. So it's such a losing proposition. I would never trade the guy. I would never do it.
But Marc Bergevin should try.
Everyone
What's your relationship with Bergevin like?
Everyone should try. Everyone should try. What's my relationship with Marc Bergevin? It's professional.
Is he a cool guy off camera? Like, is he nice?
We don't hang out, you know.
If we bump into each other, you know, heading to press conferences or something. I don't know how that works, right?
He's in an extremely difficult position. You know, the pressure that comes with his job is enormous, and I could sit here and think about it, and without experiencing it myself, I could never really pass proper judgment on it. You know, we have a cordial professional relationship. On occasion, depending on his mood, he might walk by and crack a joke. But, you know, at the end of the day, he's not there to hang out with Eric Engels. He's there to do his job. And he's got a lot more important people to hang out with and talk to. It has been hard somewhat to build a relationship with Marc beyond that professional, cordial relationship. And I don't think it's from a lack of effort from either of us. I think that's just the way he kind of needs to operate with the press in Montreal in general. Because he's got to have his guard up quite a bit, and it's hard to know who to trust and how to operate. And we don't get a lot of FaceTime with him and in one-on-one kind of situations like we do with the players and the coach on a daily basis. So it's even harder to kind of, you know, it's easier for me to get to know him. It's a lot harder for him to get to know me. And there's a lot more incentive on my end to get to know him than there is for him to get to know me.
Yeah.
So I've got nothing bad to say about. I have a ton of respect for Marc. I have a ton of respect for the way he does his job, and I have a ton of respect for the constraints within his job and how he has to operate in order to feel as though he's confident and he can trust this or that. It's a difficult dynamic, and at the end of the day, when we're done, you know, when he's done doing what he does, and long after, you know, hopefully long down the line when I'm done doing what I'm doing, I'm sure it'll be a different kind of tenor between us when we see each other. We'll be able to tell some old war stories and joke around and this and that. But business is happening, you know, when we do see each other, and it's big business for him and big business for me. So, you know, there's other people in the game that I've been able to create great relationships with that I have, you know, consistent communication with, and have had enough FaceTime for them to know who I am and to be able to trust that I'm one of those people that you'd want to, you know, have a drink with and have a conversation and this and that, and know that you can trust it's not going anywhere beyond those walls that we're in. So yeah, I don't know if that answers your question. We certainly don't have a bad relationship. We just have a professional and cordial one.
No, that's awesome. This is kind of the stuff that I'm loving about this chat, right? We kind of just go in directions, and I feel like I'm learning and absorbing a whole bunch of cool perspective and stuff. Thank you. That's awesome. So not cool, this question, but do you think that Marc Bergevin is on the hot seat after this season? You can just yes or no it if you want.
I think over $100 million was spent in the offseason to turn this team into, at the very least, a playoff team, and hopefully one that could do some damage. So I think everyone is under the microscope under those conditions. And if they were to miss the playoffs, I think there would be consequences for that. I think, you know, even Marc himself, given what he's been through, if that were to happen, I don't know how he'd react to it himself. I don't know that he would necessarily walk away, but I wouldn't strike it as a possibility that he would. I don't know. You know, I don't know how he feels about this. You know, like, this has been a really hard year for everyone. And look at the work he did to put this team together. You know, he did a great job in the offseason. We all lauded him for it. We all loved it. And he deserved that credit. And, you know, it might have been foolish of me 10 games in to say, like, how many things would have to go wrong for this guy not to be considered the GM of the year. And, you know, unfortunately, I ended up looking like a bit of a bozo on that, because a lot of things have gone wrong, and he's had to make a coaching change and a goaltending coaching change, and the team hasn't found a consistency that people are hoping for. But, you know, look at what he did and look at what those players have done. I think at the end of the day, though, there's got to be results that come with it. And so if the Canadians don't make the playoffs, which I think they're going to make the playoffs. Believe me.
Seems good, yeah.
There would certainly, I would think, be consequences for that. I think if they were to make the playoffs and get smacked by the Leafs right away, there would be consequences for that too. But to sit here and say that Marc Bergevin is on the hot seat, I think Jeff Molson really liked what he did too in the offseason. And for whatever reason, if this doesn't work, it's just going to be something that they're going to have to figure out. Is this the direction they want to continue going in? Is this the direction Mark wants to continue going in? We'll see. We'll see. It's all a blank kind of canvas as we move forward here. The Canadians are going to have to show that they're the team that Mark thinks they are, that Jeff thinks they are, that most of us thought they were at the beginning of the year. I don't think any of us anticipated that they were going to run everybody over for the rest of the season, but certainly thought they'd be better than this, and still believe that they're a team that's built for the playoffs, but they've got to show that, and they've got to prove that to themselves over these next 8 games at some point, whether it's with 5 games left or 4 games left. They need to be able to show to themselves that extra gear they believe they have is there, because we haven't seen it enough here. We haven't seen it sustained for any period of time outside of the first 10 games.
That's an awesome answer.
And very true.
Our second question is one we've been trying to answer for weeks, that we can't figure out. We need your help. What does a GM do? Like, other than sign contracts and make trades and read scouting reports, what does his week look like? Does he control pricing? What does a GM do other than those things in the week?
I think the president is more on the business side of it. Mark is entirely, and most GMs are entirely, some of those jobs obviously vary in terms of the business implications. There is a lot that passes across the GM's desk for sure. That is not just the hockey, but for the most part, it is the hockey and all the hockey operations, from the AHL considerations to the scouts, to overseeing the scouting, to directing what you want the area of focus to be and what you're looking for, and the meetings and the structure and the day-to-day operation of the hockey club. The conversations with the coaches and the capologist and this and that, it's everything you basically imagine. On the business end of it, in different markets, there are GMs with more responsibilities than just the hockey operations. But if you look at the structures, there's people in a presidency, there's CMOs, there's CFOs, there's hockey teams still have those kind of positions where ticket sales will not probably fall on Marc Bergevin's desk, I don't think, but it's not like it doesn't come across it. So I think anything you would imagine is basically there.
Awesome.
Who's going to win the cup?
I like Colorado's chances before the season started, and they haven't really done anything to change my mind on that. Last year I think I was the only person at Sportsnet who picked Tampa and Dallas in the final.
I watched that. You were on fire.
I see something very similar in Dallas that I see in Montreal. I looked at Dallas last year and said, this is a team that's built for the playoffs. They just need to get there. And if they do, I wouldn't want to play them. They play a great defensive structure. They've got a bunch of big bodies. They're physical and they check. Tampa Bay won the cup and absolutely deserved it. Dallas would have had a much better chance in that series if they didn't lose their third line. And their third line was the engine to that team. You have Radek Faksa and Blake Coleman, and guys just got hurt, Blake Como, excuse me. I said Blake Coleman, excuse me. But yeah, the guys got hurt there that were key to them. But, Montreal, if they're healthy, I'm not putting them in the cup conversation right now. They've got a lot to prove before they get there, but they're a team that should be good in the playoffs. And especially when you look at the possibility that Tatar, Danault, and Gallagher could be a matchup line and then free up the space for the Toffoli's and Andersons and Suzuki and Kotkaniemi if they step their game up the way they did a year ago. Wow, really dangerous team with a fourth line that's very experienced, and the defense that's right now looks mediocre and doesn't move the puck efficiently enough, but you get into playoffs and if they step up their game, they're not going to be fun to try to get through. I mean, and then everything depends on Carey Price being the guy that we've seen when it matters most, who steps up his game. And I thought Montreal, if they find a way here, if they can find something, I do believe it is important for them over the next 8 games. Look, odds are they're going to win 4 of them,
Yep.
But how they win them, to me, is important. But maybe it's not, We've seen teams that have backed into the playoffs that have gone on runs. If there was a team that could do it, it's this one here with what they have. But I do believe it's important. I believe it's important that they show it before they get there, not to show it to everyone else. They do need to prove that to themselves. They can believe that it's there or not, but if it doesn't go well right off the hop for them, it's going to be hard for them to say, yeah, we've got it.
I think Montreal is built for the playoffs. I just hope they get there.
But they like you said, they have to bring it, right? They can't coast on the standings.
No, they can't. But it's less about the standings. It's more about showing what you have to yourself. Like if you're going to be able to up your game in the playoffs, you need to be able to trust that it's absolutely going to be there when you get there. Like,
yeah,
we talked to Eric Staal today, and I said, Eric, like that dynamic, and he said, I said, how do you prove to yourself that what you believe is there is actually there? He said, look, in the playoffs, there is just a natural thing. It's happened every time I've been there, that it just everyone steps up. And we've seen it. We've seen it with our own eyes. But
yep,
I still do believe that this team, if they're to truly come together, has to be able to not just say that and have it as a saying in their room that they know it's there. Like, you have to be able to feel it. You have to be able to feel it, to conjure it. Like, you have to be able to feel that not only are you going to step up your game, but everyone around you is going to, and we're going to play the system the way it's meant to be played, and it's going to guide us through. Like, you can think that all you want and have that as mentality, but if you feel it, it's that much stronger. You know what I mean? I think it's a little abstract what I'm talking about, but
no, I mean,
there's a big difference between visualizing something and knowing it's actually there.
It's kind of how the Tatar, Gallagher, and Deneau line just know where each other are on the ice at all times. And is that kind of what you're like, how it's just like second nature and they just know it's going to happen? Is that kind of...
Well, I would suggest less so knowing what's going to happen and more so trusting that it's going to, right? Like, you can believe, oh yeah, we're 3 guys, we kind of fit well together, we'll play well in short spaces. But like, if you go out there and it happens, you have that to rely on as like trust. Know that the next play you make, it's not so much those guys know where each other are going to be all the time. It's that they have felt it so that it's there. Like, and that's the same thing with a playoff style effort. It's got to, I know the Canadians want to win these games. They're not going into the next 8 games saying, I hope we win 4 of them. They're going into them saying, I want to win every game. And if they don't, and if they don't win any of them, or they only win 3 or 4 of them, and they win them in a way that's kind of they're just surviving, like we've seen in the last month, are they going to, when they get to the playoffs, know that it's there? Are they going to know that? Is it going to come out of them without knowing for sure? I don't know. I think you'd rather know. So that's why I do believe these 8 games are important, less so to make the playoffs, because let's face it, like, the math is very much in their favor. I'm pretty sure they're going to make playoffs. It would take a catastrophe for them not to. But how they get there is important. If you really believe that you can turn it on in the playoffs, it would be good if you prove that to yourself before you get there, whether you believe it or not. Like, that would reinforce that belief pretty well. That would kind of be important, because if you come out in game 1 and it's not there, the pressure to have the belief that you're going to have it in game 2 or game 3 because you thought it would be there in game 1, it becomes harder to come by. Like, so yeah. You can't. I understand these games, these 8 games, they're not playoff games. You could say we're preparing for the playoffs and we're going to play them like they're playoff games, but they're not. But at the same time, you do need to be able to step your game up. You do need to be able to see, like, everyone needs to be able to see within that room, whoa, like, everyone stepped their game up. This is what we have. We knew we had it all along, but now it's here. We know it's here. That's to me, that's vital. To them, maybe it's not. And I don't know how they're going to see it. And maybe they start game 1 and boom, they're there. But
that's kind of the criticism that Tampa Bay got a couple of years ago when they got swept, right? They assumed when they got there they'd still have it, and then they got to round 1, and Columbus was playing kind of the way you're speaking that Montreal should be playing right now. They were going in every single game, gearing up, saying, we know we're an underdog going in. Let's dig in and muck and go for it. And then when they got to the playoffs, they were that team, and Tampa was kind of caught off guard, right? And then you think they almost course corrected it next year when they won the cup.
I think adversity is very important.
I love it.
It's not important to go through it for a very long time. Like you'd like to be able to curb adversity a little bit, but when the Leafs were tearing it up earlier in the season, I was really impressed with the way they were playing. Like, they had matured in their game quite a bit because the players that they brought in there brought a certain culture to the team, and they were playing a style that, like, even though they want to play their offensive style, they learned how to lock down a game and committed to locking down a game. And the most important thing was that the players who did it are the key players, like Matthews and Marner and Riley and those guys, and Nylander to a degree. They played the game the right way instead of thinking that they could just outscore their problems and it won't be an issue down the line. So that was a huge maturity moment for Toronto. And I called my buddy Steve Dangle, who's the biggest Toronto fan ever, and I said, listen, what you're seeing right now is good for two reasons. One, because they're doing that, and two, because this is a sign that the young guys have really matured to a different level, and that's like huge. And all these veterans that they brought in are really good for the team. The most important thing that could happen to them now is that they lose 5 or 6 games in a row.
I'm down with that.
That's exactly what I said to him, and they did right away. They lost 5 or 6 games in a row. You need to have some adversity. If you go through untested, the minute you get into trouble in the playoffs, the pressure ramps up to a degree that's intolerable. Like, it's intolerable. It's impossible. And that's what happened in Tampa Bay. They went through unscathed the entire season. They never had to raise their game a level to get out of a funk. And when they got there, they got smacked in the first game and then smacked in the second game. And the pressure was so high on them that they lost the next 2. Last year they had a very dominant year, but they did have a couple trouble spots, and that was kind of essential. And they had been through that experience.
Yeah.
Look at Washington. Washington lost to Pittsburgh all those times. The fact that Washington, the year they won the cup, didn't have to play Pittsburgh in the first round, that they slayed their demons and were able to get through a round, and they came in under the radar. They came in under the radar that season. Like, everyone was looking at them and saying, I remember I made a bet with Isabel Kershidian. She was in Montreal and she was working for the Washington Post, and it was late in the season. And I looked at her and I said, I think this is the year that Washington's going to win the cup. And she said, no chance, they're going to be out in the first round, because they had kind of waffled a little bit through the regular season and struggled at times. And I said, Isabel, like, this is what Washington has needed the entire time, is to be able to go in with nobody thinking they're going to win. And they have a team that has all the pieces they need to win. So if they get through that first round, watch out. And we made a bet on Junie in Montreal, which is my favorite sushi, one of my 2 favorite sushi restaurants in Montreal. I love Park also. And we just happened to be at Junie when we made the bet. And I said, if Washington wins the cup, you're taking me back to this restaurant and you're buying me a meal. And she said, no problem. And I won that bet, obviously, but it was so funny throughout the playoffs that year, because every time they made it through a series and then they played Pittsburgh, and she's like, there's no chance. And I was like, they're going to beat them. They're going to get through. And once they do, they're winning the cup. And they did. And like, adversity is crucial, especially on teams that are top dogs. If you're a top dog team running the table throughout the season, adversity is crucial to face at some point. Otherwise, the minute you get under the most pressure, it can crack you.
Well, we should be good then for the playoffs with the way we're going right now.
Well, the Canadians have faced a little more than they'd want to. That's for sure.
But it makes it exciting to see what happens, right? I mean, we talk about them being built for playoffs. This is it, right? Like, there's 2 weeks left, kind of,
There's a pressure that comes with that too. We have, because they haven't shown it in the red. Listen, I also understand this. Okay, like, the Canadians have been wire to wire in a playoff spot all year. They have not really been under threat of losing it. The closest they got really was in this Calgary series, where all they really needed to do was win one of like 3 games of the last 3.
Yep.
So you have a veteran-laden team that is built for the playoffs as everyone looks at them. Are they going to burn it playing 3 games in 4 nights and 4 nights a week and back-to-back? I'm not making an excuse for them. I'm just talking to the reality, and it's exactly what we were talking about with Staal today, is that they know what the playoffs is and they know the effort that it requires. And like in this grind of a schedule that they're in, they really are. It really is obvious that they're just trying to survive. Listen to the words that Ducharme used last night when they lost the game. And the words that he's used quite a bit as they've lost the game and the schedule has come up and all those things. Everything he says consistently is, it's about managing the game. We got to manage the game. It's not talking about going out there blasting it and winning it. It's talking about managing it, because the schedule is such that from a mental and physical standpoint, they're not really in a place where they can blast their way through. It costs them the next game. Like it's pretty interesting. We haven't seen anything like it really. I'm not excusing it, but I'm saying to myself, it's understandable. And if you survive and make your way through, and we've been saying all along that you're a playoff team and you show up in the playoffs and nothing changes, you're going to get heavily criticized for it, and deservedly so. That's the job, and that's hockey, and that's professional sports. And like they've been saying all along that they believe that they're, that they can do damage, and they believe in their group, and they believe they can beat everyone. And everyone else kind of looks at them, despite what they've seen with the inconsistency of the team, and says, yeah, they could do damage in the playoffs. So if they don't, and then they went through the entire season and weren't particularly impressive, despite the fact they were wire to wire in a playoff spot, then the narrative will be obviously that they didn't come close to reaching their potential, and maybe their potential was overrated to begin with. That's what it's going to be. That's what they're facing. So there's pressure that comes with that. But that's pro sports. There's always pressure.
Yep, especially in Montreal with hockey.
Absolutely. We're known for it. Well, Eric, we cannot thank you enough for doing this. It was awesome. Thank you so much. We hope we didn't ask you too many insane questions.
No, we're good. It was fun, guys. I enjoyed it.
You got dinner and drinks on me if you come down to Ottawa for a Sens game in the future. Cool?
Okay, I appreciate it.
Yeah, man.
Not necessary, but thanks, guys.
Happy to do it. Like, honestly, this has been so much fun. It's great hearing a voice other than us just, rambling back and forth at each other. It means the world to us that you took time just to talk to a couple of regular Joes like us,
No problem, guys. Be well.
I'm not regular. Hey.
I'm regular, yeah.
Thank you so much, Eric. I really appreciate it.
Take care.
Cheers, man.
Bye.
Bye.
All right, take care. And there you have it. That was pretty awesome, wasn't it, Ashley?
Yeah, it was awesome. Thank you so much, Eric. We really, 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 really appreciate you joining us. It was great.
Yeah, what a dude. Like, I just love that he was just being one of the guys, right? Like, it was really cool. We appreciate it. And he's got takes on hockey that are frankly better than ours, I think.
Oh, absolutely. Anytime you want to replace us or join us, feel free, Eric.
Yeah, he's welcome on anytime as a guest. Maybe we'll try to chat with him when we get into the playoffs.
If he's up for it, that'd be awesome. Thank you again so much.
Awesome. We'll have our regular content back for our full episode later this week. We're recording on Sunday because we didn't want to make you sit around for 2.5 hours listening to us, So enjoy this interview, and we'll catch up with our regular stuff later this week.
And as always, you can follow us on Instagram at FumblePuckPod. Same thing on Twitter. On Facebook, you can find us at facebook.com/FumblePuckPodcast. We're also on all your apps for podcasting, hopefully. Subscribe so that you can listen to us. And again, thanks so much, Eric. We really appreciate it. Have a wonderful, wonderful evening and enjoy, or day, whatever time you listen to this. So morning, whatever. And go Habs, go.
Cheers, everybody.